From the Cronkite studios in downtown Phoenix, this is Cronkite News.
2020 General Election Day is just 1 year away. We'll have full team coverage, including how to prepare for your trip to the polls.
Plus, we take an in-depth look at the roadblocks some Arizonans face when registering to vote.
We're in probably the most unique or most interesting time in Arizona's history when it comes to Arizona's implication on the national map.
And why Arizona could be the tipping point state of who wins the White House.
Cronkite News starts now.
It's election day for voters across the country. From Coconino to Pima County, Arizonans are bringing their concerns to the ballot box. Good evening and welcome to Cronkite News. I'm Marcela Bayeto.
And I'm Jordan Elder. Thank you for joining us. Today's 1 year off from Election Day, and it's also a reminder that the presidential election is just 1 year away. And tonight on Cronkite News, we're bringing you the stories that matter most to voters right here in our state. Today, many Tucson residents will decide whether the city will become Arizona's first and only sanctuary city. That designation would prohibit police officers from contacting federal law enforcement agencies to determine a person's immigration status. City employees would also not be able to inquire about someone's immigration status. In 2012, the City Council proclaimed Tucson an immigrant-welcoming city.
More history could be made in southern Arizona today if City Councilwoman Regina Romero wins. She'll be Tucson's first female and first Hispanic mayor since 1875. Romero has also weighed in on Prop 205, telling AZ Central making Tucson a sanctuary city is not necessary because Tucson has a long history of welcoming immigrants and has policies addressing the role of local law enforcement on immigration. The presidential election will be held Tuesday, November 3rd, 2020.
We have full team coverage headed your way to make sure you're as informed as possible before hitting a polling booth.
Up first, Cronkite News reporter Peter Gong with how we can all be better prepared. Peter?
52 weeks from today, we'll be heading to the polls to help elect the next president. But before that, there will be the presidential preference election. The Republican Party is not participating. So what do you need to do to make sure you're ready to have your vote counted?
Pre-registering if you're going to be eligible to vote by the next general election, so next November, then you can register now.
Hobbs also says the biggest issue with participating in the presidential preference election is the party registration. The deadline to register for the presidential preference election is February 18, 2020. The presidential preference election, which will happen on March 17th. Live in the broadcast center, Peter Gahn, Cronkite News.
The latest head-to-head polls show President Trump trailing Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, and Elizabeth Warren. But the Democratic presidential nominee won't even be picked until the Democratic National Convention in Milwaukee in mid-July.
With primary elections coming up in March, one organization is focused on breaking down the barriers people may face during the voting process. Reporter Andrew Christensen was at Arizonans for Fair Elections launch event to find out how they hope to make voting more accessible to everyone. Andrew?
I was at the Arizona State Capitol where Arizonans for Fair Elections launched a ballot initiative that would take out the influence of money in politics and prioritize voters rather than lobbyists. People in bluish, green, and yellow shirts gathered at the state capitol to launch Arizonans for Fair Elections, a group that hopes to make voting an easier process for disenfranchised groups.
At the state legislature over the last several years is that there has been a coordinated attempt to stop people from actually having access to the ballot box. We know here in this state and in this country, fairness to elections has always been at the forefront of democracy.
But for some, voting has been a part of tradition. They feel it is a right that is not accessible to everyone.
It's taught to me from a very young age that I have to be involved because our ancestors died and bled for my ability to be able to cast my vote because I'm an eligible voter in the United States of America.
The group claims that many in rural areas don't have access to internet or transportation in order to register to vote or make it to the polls. However, the group did not present any specific measures they would take to help those people gain access to internet or transportation. Another one of their main points, people don't have time for the voting process.
My families and many Arizona families who work minimum wage jobs don't have the time to register to vote, or this task is seen as a very difficult and tedious thing because it's not a priority.
Arizonans for Fair Elections' first order of business, introducing a ballot measure that would ban politicians from receiving gifts from special interest groups or individuals. The ballot would also require election officials to update voter registration information and allow automatic registration.
We're talking about boosting clean elections, ending some of the, and hopefully all of the abuses of the lobbying and influence process, and making voting easier for all Arizonans.
Some members believe an easier voting process is essential to the next generation.
I take my grandsons with me to vote because it's so important that they know the value of their vote.
The proposed ballot initiative needs over 200,000 signatures by July 2nd to make it onto the ballot. In the First Amendment Forum, Andrew Christensen, Cronkite News.
In the past, Arizona has been known to be a reliably red state. However, these next elections could change that. For the first time since 1996, we could go either way in the 2020 presidential election. Cronkite News reporter Mariah Gallegos found out why the possible shift is happening.
Arizona is actually considered a toss-up state and could be one of the tipping point states of who wins the White House in 2020.
Mike Noble is the chief of research at OH Predictive Insights, and he says because President Trump previously won in Arizona by the slimmest margin of 3.5 points, the next election is uncertain. The latest numbers from political polling supports that.
So you see the biggest parts of where Republicans are hurting right now are among 18 to 34-year-olds, Hispanics, which is an emerging large demographic here, also suburban voters that we're seeing. So again, among those moderates, those folks in the middle, those moderates and leaners, again, they're just not going the GOP's way, which they used to go their way.
And because of the disadvantage Republicans have, Noble expects both Democrats and Republicans to open their wallets on advertising.
What you can expect is an historic amount of money being spent in Arizona, which, funny, interesting fact, last election, the midterms, it was a historic amount of money spent in Arizona elections. Just on broadcast alone, it was about $127 million spent. We're projected to see, just in traditional broadcast, $250 million, so almost double that.
Cronkite News received this statement from the Arizona Democratic Party about their take on the race. After a long string of broken promises from Donald Trump and Arizona Republicans, Arizonans are ready to make a change in 2020. We are feeling confident about the year ahead, amidst a strong fundraising year and with an increasingly energized electorate. Over the course of the next year, Democrats will continue to highlight the issues that are most important to Arizonans, making the case that we're the party that will make Washington and the state legislature start working for every Arizonan, not just powerful special interest and the wealthy few. The Republican Party gave Cronkite News a statement saying every state in the Southwest is competitive. It goes on to say, every vote in Arizona needs to be fought for and earned. No one can take the state for granted, and that's why we gotta work so early in this cycle, laying the organizational groundwork. We have had field operatives on the ground throughout the state for months, and President Trump is personally committed to ensuring our volunteers have the resources they need to reach into every corner of the state to contact, persuade, and mobilize voters for victory.
We're in probably the most unique or most interesting time in Arizona's history when it comes to Arizona's implication on the national map.
The Senate race is heating up. OH Predictive took a look at how much money the candidates have. Democrat Mark Kelly has $9.5 million on hand, while Republican Martha McSally, who was appointed to that office and hopes to stay, has $5.6 million, and Republican Daniel McCarthy has just $71,000 on hand. As to how fast the candidates are spending that money, McSally has the highest burn rate at 44%, followed by McCarthy with 40%, and Kelly's spending rate is about 32%. The Senate is also preparing for the possibility of a Senate trial, while the House of Representatives works to move toward the public phase of the impeachment inquiry of President Donald Trump.
According to CNN, Majority Leader Mitch McConnell is getting staffers ready for what lies ahead, including 6-day work weeks, silence on the Senate floor, and a lack of other Senate business.
On the other side of the aisle, Minority Leader Chuck Schumer has set up an information hub for staffers. He's coordinating with 2020 Democratic presidential candidates in the Senate if impeachment happens. It could be during a time they'd normally be on the campaign trail. Meanwhile, President Trump on Monday again attacked the anonymous whistleblower whose complaint sparked the impeachment inquiry, saying he believes the individual gave false information. The president's claim flies in the face of mounting testimony corroborating what the whistleblower said.
I think that the whistleblower gave a lot of false information, and you have to see who the whistleblower is. Once I released the transcript, which was almost immediately, the whistleblower's report was very wrong.
The rough transcript released by the White House actually confirmed much of what the whistleblower said about the call, but the president is urging reporters to disclose the whistleblower's identity, which is illegal. House investigators have spoken to nearly a dozen witnesses about Trump's efforts to pressure the government of Ukraine to investigate Joe Biden and his son Hunter.
According to a new NBC Wall Street Journal poll, 53% of Americans support impeaching President Trump, while 44% disapprove. And 88% of Democrats now support Trump's impeachment and removal from office, compared with 90% of Republicans who oppose it.
Whether he's impeached or not, there's no question President Trump has had an impact on the government, and one impact could be felt for decades if he's removed from office: his federal judicial appointments.
Cronkite News reporter Hannah Ehrlich talked to experts in Washington about what a Trump-appointed judiciary will mean.
As of Friday, the Senate had already approved 157 of President Trump's court picks, more than any of the 5 previous presidents had confirmed by November 1st of their 3rd year in office. And the Senate is voting again today on more nominees, as Trump continues to overhaul the federal bench.
A bench that both sides agree will be decidedly more conservative for decades to come.
Almost all of these people are stars, and a lot are superstars. It's a higher quality than any previous administration, certainly in modern times.
2 of the highest profile appointments were also among the most controversial: Supreme Court Justices Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh. Confirmation hearings on Kavanaugh were particularly emotional, as he faced charges of sexual assault from his teen years. Thomas Jipping of the Heritage Foundation says Trump nominees have succeeded despite such strong opposition.
I think he's making good progress, appointing good judges, but in spite of, rather than because of, a lot of resistance.
But opponents like Elliot Minkberg of People for the American Way say that resistance is merited, considering the impact courts have on the country.
These Trump judges are on the courts for life, and they're going to continue to have bad effects for a very long time. But electing a Democrat is extremely important, in our view, to avoid further damage and, frankly, to turn things around, both on the Supreme Court and on lower courts.
Whether you like the president or not, Shapiro thinks there's a lot to like about his judicial appointments.
These are not Trumpy judges, whatever that might mean. These are solid, scholarly people with established track records.
In addition to his 2 Supreme Court appointments, Trump has also been able to name about 1/4 of judges on federal circuit courts, the courts from which future Supreme Court justices are often picked. Minkberg and Shapiro agree on one thing: if reelected, Trump will continue to remake the judiciary.
Well, already Trump has appointed about a quarter of the federal appellate judges, the circuit judges. With another term, presumably he would get up to almost half.
Trump's impact can already be seen in Arizona. 3 judges on the U.S. District Court were named by him, with 2 district court vacancies yet to fill. And 7 judges on the 9th Circuit, which includes Arizona, are Trump appointees. In Washington, Hannah Ehrlich, Cronkite News.
Well, there's no doubt President Trump is the nominee for the Republican Party. In fact, here in Arizona, the Republican Party won't even be taking part in the presidential preference election.
But here are some possible scenarios depending on the impeachment process. If the Senate does not impeach, nothing happens to change the Republican nominee for the presidential election in 2020. Donald Trump would be on the ballot. Now, the Senate could vote to impeach, but a separate vote would be required to keep him from running for federal office. If the Senate votes to impeach but allows him to run again, Trump is the likely nominee. Lastly, the Senate could impeach and vote to prevent him from running again. In that case, Vice President Mike Pence could be the nominee, or the party could choose someone else.
From you now, what issue is the most important to you in the upcoming 2020 elections? The climate, economy, immigration, or something else? So far, about 35% of you say the climate. Just go to our Cronkite News Facebook or Twitter feeds to vote in our live interactive polls.
And for continuing coverage of Election 2020, you can find us online at cronkitenews.azpbs.org. Coming up next on Cronkite News at 5, we all know about the negative impacts professional sports can have on an athlete's body.
But did you know the same is true for their mental health?
They don't want to go to the doctor because they're worried about going in debt over their health care bill.
Coming up, I'll tell you in the 7-day forecast whether the clouds rolling in the next few days will also bring some rain.
Three mothers and 6 children, including 2 infants, were killed Monday while traveling in a remote area near the U.S.-Mexico border. A relative of the victims say they all had dual citizenship, were members of a Mormon community, and were traveling from Chihuahua to Sonora. The relative says it appears members of a cartel attacked the family in a case of mistaken identity. He said the 3 vehicles they were traveling in were shot at and set on fire. 7 children were injured in the attack and flown from Mexico to Arizona hospitals. And President Donald Trump reacted to the tragedy on Twitter, saying, "This is the time for Mexico, with the help of the United States, to wage war on the drug cartels and wipe them off the face of the earth. We merely await a call from your great new president."
A group of students at the University of Arizona are demanding an apology from the school's president after remarks he made using Native American stereotypes. Members of SOAR, a university mentoring program for Native American students, say President Robert Robbins unexpectedly visited the class last month. While there, he reportedly said he wasn't, quote, trying to pull an Elizabeth Warren, but he believed he could claim Cherokee ancestry due to his, quote, very high cheekbones. President Robbins says he'll give a belated apology and that it's been humbling to hear about the impact of his words.
The state of Arizona is looking to negotiate a new settlement over the quality of health care in state prisons. According to an expert-issued report, understaffing, inadequate funding, and privatization of health care services are significant barriers in improving health care for the 34,000 inmates in Arizona's 10 state-run prisons.
Athletes take major risks with their bodies to play the sports that they love, perhaps none more so than boxers. While the sport's been popular for centuries, studies about its lasting effects are fairly new. Cronkite News reporter Erica Morris talked to current and former boxers to find out more. Erica?
Yeah, Marcella, anyone can be blindsided by an unexpected injury or illness. For boxers, injuries are part of the job. That's why 2 champion boxers teamed up to tell the uninsured to go ahead and get enrolled. For Layla Ali, the daughter of Muhammad Ali and a former boxer herself, life outside the ring means relying on great health care for her whole family, especially after they coped with Ali's Parkinson's until his death in 2016.
You can't help the fact that you have to see that he got sick. Even being a world champ, being one of the most loved world icons, you know, you can still get sick. Anything can happen. Nobody can run from it. You know, so that really shaped my view of the world and situations that can occur in life.
Current featherweight super champion Leo Santa Cruz recognizes just how tough boxing is on his body.
Also, you know, in boxing, you know, we get hit, you know, so it's very dangerous.
That danger shook the boxing world recently with the death of 27-year-old middleweight boxer Patrick Day on October 12th, who died from brain trauma sustained in a match that ended in his knockout.
You know, that was very sad for boxing. You know, it makes us think, you know, me, like, I was like, you know, I'm doing this, I'm in boxing.
Ali and Santa Cruz shared their experiences in a promotion with the state's health insurance program Covered California.
Who's ready to do a little workout with me?
About 50 people got in the ring in downtown Los Angeles learning fitness tips and workout practices that utilizes exercise as a preventative measure. While staying fit is a part of it, Ali and Santa Cruz acknowledges that healthcare needs to be affordable.
I have many friends who don't have health care insurance, and a lot of times they're telling me they're not feeling well or they're dealing with some ailment, but then they don't want to go to the doctor because they're worried about going in debt over their health care bills.
That is, you know, very important for my family because, like I said, you know, my dad, if it wasn't for, you know, us having that, I think he would have been dead already.
And that's a reality they're trying to change. Open enrollment for Arizona closes December 15th. For more information, go to healthcare.gov. In Santa Monica, Erica Morris, Cronkite News.
More and more tourists are planning vacations here in Arizona. According to the latest report from the Office of Tourism, it turns out a record 45.4 million people spent at least one night in AZ in 2018. They also spent nearly $25 billion last fiscal year. And the Grand Canyon took the top spot with over 6 million visitors. Millard, it was pretty cold for a while, but it seems like it's getting better.
Yeah, we're actually going to see an increase in temperatures over the next few days, but before that, let's start with your Tuesday weather report. So as you guys are getting off work right now, temperatures are going to be sitting at about 87 degrees around 5 p.m. They're actually going to dip down all the way to 80 degrees around 7 p.m. So if you're heading out tonight, you could just leave that sweater at home because we're going to have a nice cool night, and then temperatures are going to tail off about 73 degrees around 10 p.m. Now, if you woke up on the north side of Arizona tomorrow, temperatures are going to be sitting at 28 degrees if you're in Flagstaff. But don't worry, if you woke up in the valley, you're seeing 61 in Phoenix, and if you woke up down south, 53 down in Tucson. And speaking of the valley, average temperature this time of year is going to be 80 degrees, but we're going to be right above that. 85 in Phoenix, 84 is Surprise, and then that cool spot is actually going to be up north, Cave Creek at 80 degrees. Now let's see how your next 3 days are shaping up. As you can see, 85 on Wednesday with a little cloud coverage, 87 on Thursday, little cloud coverage, and then a beautiful Friday, sunny, 88 degrees. Let's see what your weekend's looking like. You can see Friday's actually going to be that peak for the week. It's going to be 87 on Saturday, minimal cloud coverage. Fully cloudy on Sunday, 86 degrees. Then we're gonna have a nice sunny Monday, 84, and a nice sunny Tuesday, also at 83 degrees. Average temperature for this week is gonna be 80 degrees, but we're gonna be above that, sitting in the mid 80s. And that's your 7-day forecast. I'm Millard Thomas from the Cronkite News Weather Center.
There's more to come on Cronkite News at 5. Tonight we'll take you to a local pumpkin patch and show you how they're making sure their Halloween leftovers are becoming treats.
Arizona Horizon Tempe Town Lake celebrates its 20-year anniversary, and we'll hear about efforts to help veterans who suffer from PTSD. That's on the next Arizona Horizon.
I'm Amna Nawaz. Tonight on the NewsHour, the first transcripts from the House impeachment inquiry are released. It's coming up after Cronkite News and Arizona Horizon on Arizona PBS.
Trick-or-treating has ended and the Halloween season has come to a close, sadly. But pumpkin patches around the country still have a ton of leftovers.
That's right. Last year, America produced 1.5 billion pounds of pumpkins. So where do they all go? Well, I decided to find out for myself. Take a look. After the hayride has ended, The scarecrows are laid to rest, and the signs are dismantled. The Fall Fest at McDonald's Ranch in Scottsdale is closed for the season, but they're left with hundreds of pumpkins.
During the month of October, we'll have like 10,000 pumpkins, put out, every weekend. So we have thousands of pumpkins.
But Richardson says the ranch doesn't want to pitch their pumpkins into a landfill after Halloween, left to rot with all the others that get tossed each year. Since 2016, they've put their leftovers on the plates of others.
We donate a lot of them to the wildlife foundations around the valley. A lot of people who own livestock will come buy them from us.
You don't want anything that something else can eat to go to waste. There's animals that need it. There's people that can use them.
And some of these animals are found right on the ranch.
We can give our leftover pumpkins to the cows because the cows love to eat the pumpkins.
This is Reggie right behind me, and Reggie is going to town on this pumpkin. How's it taste, Reggie?
It's like a treat. They play with them, they eat them.
Donating the pumpkins or dumping them in the pasture helps the ranch accomplish one of their sustainability goals.
Just to make our footprint a lot smaller. I mean, the waste that comes with Halloween, it's not just getting tossed or ending up in a landfill or, it's not money wasted. It all comes full circle.
The pumpkins end up decomposing in landfills each year, emitting methane that contributes to greenhouse gases. That's not the ending McDonald's Ranch wants for their leftovers. McDonald's Ranch donates many of their leftovers to the Southwest Wildlife Conservation Center in Scottsdale. They said the bears and the bobcats enjoy the pumpkins almost as much as the cows do.
So cute. I have never thought about it. Where do the ugly pumpkins go?
Exactly.
Yeah, I've actually never even carved a pumpkin, so I definitely need
oh
to
my
check this
gosh,
place
we
out.
have to do that for next season. That's it for Cronkite News tonight. Thanks for joining us.
And for top Arizona stories anytime, go to cronkitenews.azpbs.org. You can also find us on Facebook and Twitter at Cronkite News.
Arizona Horizon with Ted Simons is next. Have a great evening.